So today's lesson is lesson 8.3, multiplication of fractions. Our objectives today then to be able to multiply fractions and to be able to find fractions of an amount. Prior knowledge before we start then, you should be able to simplify a fraction. So remember, to simplify a fraction, you're dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same value until you get to the smallest digits possible. So we've got an example there of 8 out of 20. 8 and 20 are both divisible by 4, so we divide them both by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, 20 divided by 4 is 5, and we get 2 out of 5. We should understand that division can be written as a fraction, so 20 out of 4 is the same as 20 divided by 4. And you should be able to change improper fractions to mixed numbers. So an improper fraction, remember, is one where the numerator is larger than the denominator. To change it to a mixed number, we see how many times the denominator fits into the numerator. So 4 goes into 15 3 whole times. That's our whole number here. And if we fit 4 into 15 3 whole times, that's 12. To get from 12 to 15, we've got 3 remainder. That becomes our new numerator, and our denominator remains the same as it was. So we're in quarters, so our denominator is in quarters. So 15 out of 4 is the same as 3 3/4, and we call this a mixed number where we have whole numbers and fractions. Things you need for this lesson then: you need your maths book or some paper to write in, and you need a pen or a pencil to write with. Okay, let's get started then. So multiplication of fractions. When multiplying two fractions, we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators. So unlike adding and subtracting, we do not need a common denominator to multiply fractions. We can multiply different fractions together. So an example then, if I want 7 out of 12 multiplied by 2 out of 9, I multiply the numerators together, so 7 times 2, and the denominators together, 12 times 9. 7 times 2 is 14, 12 times 9 is 108. I've now got a fraction. Now, because this fraction is quite large, we should try to simplify it if we can. So we're looking for a number that fits into 14 and 108. Now I can see that they're both even numbers. If I can see they're both even, then I know they can be divisible by at least 2. So I'm going to try that first. So if I divide 14 by 2, I get 7, and 108 by 2, I get 54. And now I would look again. Now I'm looking to see, well, 7 can only be divided by 7 because it's a prime number. Can 54 be divided by 7? No, so that's the smallest fraction we can have for that one. Okay, another example then. If we want to multiply an integer and a fraction, we must first turn the integer into a fraction by dividing it by 1. And then we can treat them as two normal fractions. So here we have 5 times 3 out of 4. So our integer times by a fraction. So we're going to turn this integer into a fraction first by dividing it by 1. So there we are, 5 divided by 1. Now we can treat them as two normal fractions. So we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators. So 5 times 3 and 1 times 4. Well, 5 times 3 is 15 and 1 times 4 is 4. Again, we've now got a single fraction, but this time it's a top-heavy or improper fraction. Our numerator is bigger than our denominator. So we need to change that into a mixed number. So remember, the rule for changing to mixed numbers is we see how many of the denominator we can fit into the numerator. So if I count up in 4s, I get 4, 8, 12. Okay, I can't do any more because the next one will go to 16, which is too big. So that's 3 whole ones. So there's my 3 whole ones. To get from 12 to 15, I need 3 more. So my remainder becomes my numerator. And my denominator of the fraction is the same as the denominator I've ended my question with. So I get 3 3/4 of 3 and 3 out of 4. Often when you're doing an integer multiply with a fraction, you will end up with a mixed number at the end. So just be prepared for that. So you could get either a whole number or sometimes a mixed number at the end. Make sure you're happy with those two examples. If you need to write them down, please pause the video and do so. Okay, so now it's your turn. So we've got 4 questions of multiplying fractions with fractions and 4 questions of multiplying an integer and a fraction. So use those examples to help you to complete those questions. Pause the video and have a go now. All right, let's have a look at the solutions then. So for our first one, we've done 1 times 1 is 1 and 4 times 5 is 20. We get 1 out of 20. We can't simplify it. For number 2, we get 2 times 2 is 4 and 3 times 5 is 14. They're both even, so we've divided them by 2 to give us 2 out of 7, and we can't simplify any more from there. So if you got to this point here, a 4 out of 14, that is a correct fraction. If in the question it asks for the simplest answer, though, we would be expected to simplify to 2 out of 7. For number 3 then, 2 times 2 is 4 and 3 times 7 is 21. And there are no numbers that fit into 4 and into 21. So that's as simple as it is. And for number 4, 5 times 5 is 25 and 6 times 8 is 48. And again, there are no numbers that fit into 25 and 48. Moving on to our integers. So remember, our first step is to turn the integer into a fraction by dividing it by 1. So we have 5 divided by 1 times our half. Now we can multiply our numerators. So 5 times 1 is 5, 1 times 2 is 2. It's an improper fraction. 2 fits into 5 2 whole times with 1 remainder, which goes back over our denominator of 2, and we get 2.5. For the next one then, so we're going to put the 7 divided by 1 first. So 7 times 1 is 7, 1 times 4 is 4. 4 fits into 7 1 whole time with 3 remaining, which goes back over our denominator of 4. We get 1 3/4. For the next one then, so we're going to put our 8 divided by 1 to start with. Then we multiply. 8 times 2 is 16, 1 times 3 is 3. 3 fits into 16 5 whole times with 1 remainder, which goes back over the denominator of 3, giving us 5 1/3. And finally, we're going to divide the 6 by 1 to start with. Then we can multiply. So 6 times 3 is 18, 1 times 4 is 4. So 4 fits into 18 4 whole times with 2 remainder, which goes back over the 4. Now you might notice that you get 2/4 here. So the fraction element of the mixed number can also be simplified because they are both even. So if we divide them both by 2, we end up with a half. We keep our whole 4 at the beginning, and all we've done is simplified the fraction part as well. So you can do that here in the last step, or you could have simplified the 18 over 4 first and then changed it to a mixed number. So it's up to you which way round you do those if you spot those. Okay, well done if you managed to get all of those. Okay, we're moving on now then to look at fractions of an amount. So finding the fraction of an amount is the same as multiplying a fraction by an integer. So the word of in maths means to multiply. So for example, 3/4 of 100 is the same as 3/4 times 100. So we've simply swapped the word of for the times symbol. So let's have a look at some examples. So if I want to know 1/4 of 100, I'm going to change my of sign to a times. And because I've got an integer, remember, I need to turn it into a fraction first. So I'm going to put a 1 underneath the 100. So we get 1/4 times 100 over 1. Now we can just multiply as normal. So we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators. So 1 times 100 over 4 times 1. 1 times 100 is 100, 4 times 1 is 4. So we've now got 100 divided by 4. They're both even, so we can simplify it. Now you might want to simplify it. You can hopefully see they're both divided by 4, or you might do it in 2 steps. You might divide by 2 and then divide by 2 again. But 4 goes into 100 25 times exactly with no remainders. Okay, let's have a look at this one then. So we've got 2 out of 3 of 60, 2/3 of 60. So again, we're going to start by making 2 fractions by putting a 1 under the 60 and changing the of to a times sign. Now we'll multiply as normal. So we're going to do 2 times 60 and 3 times 1. 2 times 60 is 120, 3 times 1 is 3. So, top heavy fraction, how many 3's can I fit into 120? So 3 fits into 12 4 times and into 0 no times. So we end up with 40. You can always at this point do the bus shelter method if you prefer for your division. You'll notice that these come out quite often as whole numbers. Make sure you've made a note of those examples before you move on to have a go for yourselves. Okay, so some more questions here then. So make sure you follow the same pattern as the examples. Pause the video and have a go at these. Okay, let's have a look at the solutions then. So for the first one, we're going to have 1 over 5 times 65 over 1. 1 times 65 is 65. 5 times 1 is 5. And 5 fits into 65 13 whole times. For number 2, we've got 1 times 60 is 60. And 12 times 1 is 12. 12 fits into 60 5 whole times. Number 3, 1 times 99 is 99, 11 times 1 is 11, 11 fits into 99 9 whole times. 1 times 108 is 108, 9 times 1 is 9, 9 fits into 108 12 whole times. We need to be quite good with our times tables for these. The next one then, 2 times 39 is 78. And 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 fits into 78 26 whole times. So again, if you need to at this point, you may need to do your bus shelter division to help you. For the next one then, we've got 2 times 45 is 90, and 5 times 1 is 5. 5 fits into 90 18 whole times. Our next one, 3 times 60 is 180, and 4 times 1 is 4. 4 fits into 180 45 times. And finally then, 2 times 56 is 112, and 7 times 1 is 7, and 7 goes into 112 16 times. Make sure you've checked those and made any corrections. So hopefully with the first set, reasonably straightforward numbers. When we get to the slightly more difficult numbers, as I said, you may need to use your bus shelter division to help you with simplifying these top heavy fractions. Okay, our final question for today then, so a real life question. So Erica is preparing a party for 30 people. She estimates the amount of food each person will eat. So she thinks they need to eat 1/4 of a pizza, 1/3 of a loaf of garlic bread, 1/6 of a lettuce, 3/4 of a tomato, 1/12 of a bottle of salad cream, and 1/8 of a tub of coleslaw. How much of each type of food should Erica buy? Now you can pause the video now if you want to have a go at this on your own, or you can work it through with me. Okay then, so we want to know how much she needs for 30 people. Okay, so her estimates then, we're starting with the pizza. So each person needs 1/4. Okay, so we need 1/4 of our 30 people. So we're going to do 1/4 times our 30 over 1 to make it into 2 fractions. So 1 times 30 is 30, and 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 goes into 30 7 whole times, with 2 remaining over our denominator of 4. Now you can't buy 7 2/4 pieces of pizza, so she would need to buy 8 pizzas. So when we're talking real life, if we can't buy something in parts, then we always round up to the next number to make sure that we've got enough. Okay, for the tomatoes then, so 3/4 of 30. So 3 times 30 is 90, 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 goes into 90 22 whole times, with 2 out of 4 left over. So again, we need to round up. She will need 23 tomatoes. For the next one then, garlic bread, a third per person, so a third times our 30 gives us 30 over 3. 3 fits into 30 10 whole times, so she can buy 10 garlic breads. For the salad cream, a 1/12 of a bottle, so 12 times 30 over 1 is 30 over 12. 12 fits into 32 whole times, with 6 remaining back over our 12. So again, we'll need to round up. So the next whole bottle is 3 bottles of salad cream. For lettuce, a 6 times 30, so 30 over 6. 6 fits into 35 whole times, so she can buy 5 whole lettuces. And finally, the coleslaw, an 1/8 of a tub each, so an 1/8 of 30 is 30 over 8. 8 goes into 33 whole times, with 6 remaining back over the 8. So again, we round up, and she'll need 4 tubs of coleslaw. All right, thank you then for working through that lesson today. Next lesson, we're going to have a look at dividing fractions.